Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen Kingcast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King.
Each week, I'll review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication, and if you are listening to this, you are listening to a quasi-bonus edition of my review of King's 2003 short story publication, Everything's Eventual. For fans of The Dark Tower, you were certainly thrilled when this collection came out and realized that it not only included one, but two stories pertaining to The Dark Tower, one of which starring the gunslinger himself. I know that this certainly perked my interest. So rather than talking around Dark Tower spoilers in the Everything's Eventual review, I decided to review the Little Sisters of Eluria and Everything's Eventual, the short story, right here, so I can get into much more detail and see how these two stories fit into the greater Dark Tower mythos, especially now that the end of the Dark Tower is finally in sight. Just to back us up a little bit and get us ready for the next month or so, at the time of publication of Everything's Eventual, King had announced not one, not two, but 3 Dark Tower books. And they aren't just 3 Dark Tower books, but they're the final 3 Dark Tower books. For all of us fans who waited in anticipation for any news on an upcoming Dark Tower book, this was an unexpected and massive treat. This was King committing himself to finishing the story he'd begun so many years before. And not only was he finally going to finish the books, but he was also going to re-release The Gunslinger with added pages and a revision to make it more consistent with the world he'd built between the Drawing of the Three and Wizard in Glass, as well as Insomnia, Hearts in Atlantis, and Black House. So King was fully immersed in the world of the Dark Tower to the point where ideas were just spilling out of his head that had to be contained wherever he could find them, like here in this collection of short stories. Now, with that said, Little Sisters of Eluria was published first in 1998, I believe, but that's still hot on the heels of the incredible Wizard in Glass. And after having just finished reading Black House, it made me want to reread Little Sisters that much more because Eluria is visited within the pages of the sequel to The Talisman. But before I get into the review itself, let me read a listener email, this one from Strauss Monkey. Hey CR, thanks for responding. I'll keep this short. I'm pretty confident about the Barlow point about not being invited in. In the previous email from Strauss Monkey, he had issue with the fact that in Salem's Lot, Barlow he just barged into the kitchen, and I argued that maybe because he was a different type of vampire, he was a type 1, type 1s maybe don't need invitation. So he writes, I now listen to about 75% of your episodes and cannot wait until you get into some of the upcoming books, namely Rose Madder, Black House, and the remaining Dark Tower tomes. Also, I listened to the Halloween episode. Great interaction between you and your cohorts. Very laid back and fun, and extremely interesting, as are all your episodes. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Whether I agree with your analysis or not, I always enjoy hearing your viewpoints. Though Fran's baby being the Crimson King, I need to hear that line of reasoning more clearly. Okay, so when I first read this particular part of the email, I don't know, like my heart kind of skipped a beat for a moment because I was immediately concerned that if Strauss Monkey, if he, okay, so just to back up, in my review of The Stand, I just kind of riffed a little bit, and I just to be honest, I was getting a little bored as I was rereading The Stand for the 4th, 5th, or 6th time, whatever it was, and I was just at one of those points, just to give you just a little bit of context here, there are times when I am fully into this podcast, and there are times where I feel like bashing my head against the wall. So it goes in ebbs and flows, just to be perfectly honest, because it can just get very tiresome, but that's neither here nor there. But I was feeling one of those moments as I was reviewing the Stand review, and I got to this one part where it was about Fran, and she was talking about her baby, and I just kind of decided to be a little bit of an ass, and I just went on this spiel about the words and the connotations within the imagery there, and all that it was, it was a joke. I was just joking that Fran eating at Dairy Queen was evidence that Fran is clearly the mother of the Stephen King uber villain, the Crimson King. By no means was I being serious. I was just being. It was just the childish English major in me, who was just going for deep analysis on stuff that is not there in the text to support the analysis itself. So, I mean, it was like one time I was in college and we were sitting around. This is just when I was just steeped in literature and literary analysis. As many of you who are English majors, I'm sure that you will be able to relate to. And my roommates and I, we were sitting around watching television, and Everybody Loves Raymond was on, and I was just kind of venting about how sick I was of having to look for deeper meaning everywhere. And just to prove my point, I just started giving an analytical commentary to everything that was occurring within Everybody Loves Raymond, and none of it was there, but it was just showing what the life of an English major is like. And basically, I don't remember what the point I was making is that something about like how Deborah was withholding. She was a withholding person and withholding her love, and just on and on. She dumps water, ergo she's dumping the life that she has built with Raymond, and it just kind of went on and on from there. It was a good 10 minutes where I was just supporting this stupid asinine theory that I had argued, and I did the same thing here with The Stand. So no, the Crimson King is not Fran Goldsmith's baby. I am not, and the fact that it's at Dairy Queen, I am not saying that it is connected to it because dairy. I'm not. It was me being just kind of a jerk. So, guys, if there have been any questions about whether or not that was a joke, it was just a joke. So he continues to write, keep up the excellent work. You have caused me so much thinking to occur in my head that I have begun rereading books I haven't thought of in decades. Insomnia, The Tommyknockers, The Dark Half, The Talisman, and your wonderful insights to the Dark Tower. I'm proud to be a Tower junkie. Listen, it's been great getting to know you through the great work of Mr. King. Incidentally, I have a typed postcard from him dated 3/29/80, actually typed and signed in ink. I had written to him and told him I read Salem's Lot so many times and passed it to so many people I had to buy another copy. His postcard says, "Dear David, thank you so much for buying not one but 2 copies of Salem's Lot and for being such a loyal reader. Be well." And then his signature. That is pretty awesome. So, thanks for letting me ramble. And before I forget, I didn't see the Beverly Marsh scene at the end of It the same way you did at all. I took it as the White giving Beverly the power to calm everyone back down and refocus. They were all panicking. Eddie's bump of direction was totally failing him. Richie and Ben were crying. They were lost, desperate, and terrified. Beverly took over and shocked them back right here and now in the only way she could think of. She focused them personally, one at a time, and afterward they were able to go forward again. I didn't get any flavor of rape or gangbang at all. I took it as a very tender moment when one of the losers gave everything for the others. They all took turns giving their all. If that's not a grammatical Mobius strip, just my thoughts. I was going to keep this short, but I'm so pleased you responded. I will definitely write again. I am now a confirmed ambassador for your podcast. Thank you. P.S. And the musical choices are absolutely excellent. Often funny, always spot on. Great job. Strauss Monkey, as always, thank you for writing in. I love your feedback. I love hearing your thoughts. So, feel free to write in whenever the urge strikes you. And thank you. You're not the only one that has written in about the ending of It. But I still stand by my guns. It bothers me, that ending. I don't like that particular ending of the book. I think that it still is completely misguided. And it's just one of those areas where I think that we're going to have to agree to disagree, which is fine because that's the whole point of this podcast. All right, guys. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to get into my review of Little Sisters of Eluria. So first I'm going to read the Wikipedia summary so I will have a basis upon which I can build my analysis.
The Little Sisters of Eluria. The tale features Roland of Gilead, whose quest for the Dark Tower is in its infancy. Its events precede those of the Body of the Dark Tower cycle, but occur after Roland's experiences in Mayhees, as chronicled in the Dark Tower 4, The Wizard in Glass. At the time of telling his At the time of this telling, he is accompanied by a horse and is already following Walter O'Dim, the man in black. He plans to eventually buy another horse, perhaps a mule, which ties in with the events at the beginning of the Dark Tower, the Gunslinger. Roland and his horse arrive at a deserted village, Eluria, where they encounter a feral dog bearing a cross-shaped spot on its fur attempting to eat a dead body. Roland scares it off, and while looking over the corpse, finds a rectangular medallion. Roland takes it and is immediately attacked and rendered unconscious by a group of slow mutants. He later awakens in a hospital marquee run by a strange group of nuns. Calling themselves the Little Sisters, they use tiny bug-like creatures they call doctors to heal his severe injuries. Roland slowly discovers the sisters are actually vampires, who bring stray survivors back to their hospital only to feed on them once they've recovered. The medallion Roland took from the dead body in the village proves to be a sort of holy protection from them. He notices another patient next to him who bears a matching medallion, and Roland comes to learn that the dead man whose medallion he removed is the brother of this fellow patient. Roland's wounds are eventually healed, but he's powerless to escape from his malevolent benefactors who keep him weakened with potions. One of the sisters, Sister Jenna, reveals to Roland that she had involuntarily joined the others and longs to leave them. She sneaks a dose of powerful herb to Roland which counteracts the weakened potions, and he slowly regains his strength until he's ready to escape. The sisters bring one of the mutants to the hospital to remove the medallions from Roland and the patient next to him, since the sisters are unlikely to touch the medallions themselves. The mutant realizes the sisters will most likely kill him after he's removed the medallions, so he removes the medallions from the patient next to Roland and slashes the patient's neck open. The sight of the gushing blood incites the sisters into a feeding frenzy, allowing the mutant to escape and Roland to retain his medallion. The next night, Roland and Sister Jenna initiate their escape, but the sisters try to stop them. The Sister Jenna reveals an ability to command the doctors, who provide a diversion. Their leader, Great Sister Mary, soon catches up with them, but is attacked and killed by the same cross-bearing dog Roland first encountered. Roland and Sister Jenna declare love for one another, but Jenna disintegrates into what may have been her natural state, the tiny doctors, while Roland is asleep. Roland allows himself a moment of sorrow before his quest for Walter, and ultimately the Dark Tower continues, once again, quote-unquote, quite alone.
So analysis. It is just so interesting and fun to revisit Roland before he came more to life and kind of bloomed after drawing his quartet into the world. One thing that King managed to do quite well in the later books was dispel the image that Roland was comfortable being by himself, and that is just certainly not the case. With what we know about Roland, the guy hates it. He hates being alone. He might not be the most personable individual, but he thrives in the presence of others and respects relationships, whether they be with his quartet or, in this case, his horse, Topsy. Just one more victim that takes him closer to the tower. He shows the horse respect as it inches closer to death. The story takes Roland to the deserted village of Eluria, and there's so much fun to be had in watching our favorite character try to solve the mystery of what had occurred. More than any other Dark Tower entry so far, this one truly feels like a horror story. And later on, after the conclusion of the Dark Tower, King will also release Wind Through the Keyhole, which is a series of stories within stories, and the story that Roland tells to his quartet of the Skin Man, which takes place after the events of Wizard and Glass, but before the events here of Little Sisters of Eluria, is even more of a horror story than this. He wanders through the empty town, discovers the dog, and demonstrates his appreciation for life. The thought of killing the dog, as King writes, hurt his heart. And just as he decides to bury the body of the boy he finds in the street, he's set upon by slow mutants, known round these parts as Green Men. This was a pleasant surprise, because the slow mutants were such a memorable part of the Gunslinger, and they haven't been spotted since. It's a very fun scene that shows Roland, a little younger, a little more vulnerable. His instincts hadn't become as finely tuned as they would in later books, as the slow mutants are able to get the drop on him. I said a little while ago this feels like a horror story. With this scene, it specifically feels like a zombie story. Before Roland knows it, there's 30 green-skinned slow mutants pouring through the streets to get to him, and it's awesome. And without the killer's instincts, they manage to overpower him. And when he awakens, he finds himself in the care of the sisters, in the pavilion. Jenna's voice conjures Susan, whose tragic end has been chronicled in Wizarding Glass. And Jenna is joined by the other sisters who conjure not Susan, but Rhea. The sisters immediately send unease through the reader. There's clearly something wrong with them, and we can't wait to figure out what it is, and what Roland sees moving below another patient's shirt, which are revealed to be healing insects known as the Doctors. Through a conversation with one of the sisters, we get a sense of the hierarchy, and when he speaks with a young boy in the bed next to him, the boy reveals that the sisters aren't human at all. The mystery deepens as the boy explains that the other patients would be covered with the bugs, get better, and disappear. The sisters return, and Roland overhears them speaking in the language of the dead, using the exact same phrases heard in Desperation and most recently Black House. During this scene, Roland heard them feeding on a patient, and he understands what they are. Jenna later intervenes to help Roland escape, and she uses the Doctors to eat one of the sisters. As she runs away with Roland under the kissing moon, she hints at a greater mythology which we'll never understand, which is fine with me. Just playing at its edges is more than enough, because this isn't Roland's quest. It's just one of countless adventures he has had along the way, and knowing the true nature of Jenna and the Dark Bells and the rules of the sisterhood do not need to be known to be enjoyed by the reader. In the end, there's a brief struggle with Sister Mary. We've seen Roland take on demons, zombies, wizards, lobstrosities, robotic bears, haunted houses, sentient trains, witches, and now we get to see him face down a vampire. She is dispatched by Ka that comes in the form of the marked dog, and from there he and Jenna escape, but it's not meant to be, and Roland is delivered another tragic romance as her essence spreads out among the little Doctors. And with the adventures of Eluria over, he continues his quest to find the Men in Black. So Stephen Kingisms, the first of which are vampires. We have seen vampires as far back as Salem's Lot, but again in One More for the Road, in Popsy, and the Night Flyer. We will see the original vampires and their defeat in the squalid Dixie Pig in the final pages of the Dark Tower series. And then Easter eggs, Black House. So in the pages of the Black House, as you'll know if you listen to the review, Eluria itself is mentioned, and we see this pavilion. The Little Sisters are mentioned. This hospital is visited, and then the Little Doctors. The Little Doctors will be seen again, and they're not going to be referred to as the Doctors. They're going to be known more. Ubiquitously known as grandfather fleas, because they travel around, just a gross name, huh? But they just travel around the ancient, more powerful type 1 vampires that are just monsters living with these bugs. And what's really neat is that there's just a throwaway line, and King's so good at this. Just with a throwaway line, he just builds the mythology so well. And there's just the implication that the Billy Bumbler is the natural enemy of the grandfather fleas, the Little Doctors, that this animal was bred through nature or through the white, who knows, to be the natural predator of these vampiric bugs, which is awesome. Number 3, Delane. The boy in the infirmary is from Delane, which is the setting for Eyes of the Dragon. Number 4 is Language of the Dead. The Little Sisters speak in the language of the dead, first heard in Desperation, but will be heard again was heard again in Black House, and will just be heard throughout the rest of the Dark Tower series. So final thoughts on Eluria. I would just love more stories like this. And it's one of the reasons why I enjoy The Wind Through the Keyhole, because the story that we get... with Roland and Jamie DeCurry in Debaria as they're hunting the Skin Man, there are some great moments of imagery in that particular story. I really enjoyed rereading that one, and he's able to just go into the bigger history and world building of Midworld. That was really, really fun. But I would just love to see just more adventures of Roland throughout his life. I mean, what happened in the time between he returns to Mayhis and the fall of Gilead, and what happens during that time, what happens right before the Battle of Jericho Hill, or the moments right after the Battle of Jericho Hill. There's one thing that has never been answered here, which kind of is a glaring error, is how did Roland come to pursue the man in black? I mean, what's that all about? I mean, we know he needs to get to the tower, but when did he say, the man in black is going to lead me to the tower, I'm going to find the man in black? What was the interaction, or what had he heard? Who set him on the path of the man in black? What was the encounter that showed Roland that was his way to get to the tower? It's never been explored. That's never been explained. So that's a story that needs to be told. Maybe it's through Rhea. Maybe it's through Rhea. And that's something that will never be told. That was never told. Was what happens when Roland meets up with Rhea again. So I know that Stephen King has it in him. I mean, there are stories left untold. So I would love to see Roland go back to the world, or King go back to the world of the Gunslinger and tell those untold stories. Because it would be amazing. Alright guys, now I'm going to talk about Everything's Eventual. The story is told in first-person perspective by a 19-year-old high school dropout, Richard Dinky Earnshaw. Dinky fatuously explains that he's got a good job now. He used to be a clerk at the Super Saver, where he worked with morons and was relentlessly bullied by an aggressive dimwit named Skipper. But now Skipper's dead, and Dinky's got a new job, where the main perks are that he gets his own house and his own car and virtually anything he's asked for, including CDs that have not been released yet. He also gets a small wad of cash each week, provided he doesn't look for the people who drop it through his mail slot, and that he remembers to destroy it or throw away any more money left over at the end of the week. He gets rid of his excess change by dropping it down the gutter of his house, and he puts his bills in the garbage disposal each week. As it turns out, Dinky has a certain gift. He has the ability to mentally influence people by drawing complicated pictures or designs in a way that he does not completely understand. This is illustrated when he recalls that, as a child, he seemingly unknowingly used this ability to drive a dog to suicide that had tormented him on his way home from school. After Skipper humiliated him every day for years, Dinky makes the decision to use his power to kill Skipper, or more accurately, to make Skipper kill himself. Dinky is discovered by a man named Mr. Sharpton, who claims to work for the Trans Corporation, an organization that searches across the world for people with such talents. Dinky is recruited to kill very specific targets by emailing them these designs he creates on an Apple computer. He is, in return, given a life that seems ideal, complete with a house and other benefits. Mr. Sharpton tells Dinky that the people he has ordered to kill are wicked, horrible criminals, and that the world is better off without them. For a time, Dinky is happy with his new position, living life in a semi-mindless bliss. However, when Dinky finds an article in the newspaper about one of the individuals whom he has killed, a seemingly innocent old newspaper columnist, he begins to feel guilty for what he has done. After researching more into his other victims, Dinky realizes that the Trans Corporation has been using him to assassinate political dissidents and alternative thinkers. As the story ends, he is planning his escape from the Trans Corporation, but not before sending one final email to Mr. Sharpton, his recruiter. Now, this is a fun story that works on so many levels. It seems as though Dinky speaks for a lot of us. Aren't we all, in some ways, tethered to our little houses of comfort? He has the appearance of freedom, but he's clearly a slave to the Transcorp. And in some ways, we're not free at all. It's what I like about the fact that he gets $70 each week. It's 70. It's not 75. It's not 100. It's enough, and just a reminder that it's all that you're getting. It's enough to remind him to remember his place in the grand scheme of things. As we learn the day-to-day facts of Dinky's existence, we suddenly need to understand why he's living this life, and we start to get those answers. How he first met Mr. Sharpton. King starts teasing the next mystery. What happened to Skip Brannigan? We learn about Dinky's power, which is a different take on the typical Stephen King paranormal ability. First, he's able to kill the flies, then the neighborhood dog, and then Skipper. He's recruited by Mr. Sharpton and begins his work for the Trans Corporation, and eventually he realizes he's been lied to and is now a mass murderer. He is then contacted by a friend who gives him directions on how to get out, but not before he types one last letter to the man who brought him into this. It's suggested that Dinky escapes, and maybe he does. Maybe he does, but it's definitely not for long, because what happens is he runs right out of Transcorp and into the clutches of the Sombra Corporation. Transcorp, it turns out, is an offshoot of Sombra, much in the way that North Central Positronics is an offshoot of Sombra, and the assassination, it's referred to as an assassination program. And so he is wound up being taken, and he becomes one of the breakers in All Jules Ciento, where we will meet him again in the pages of the Dark Tower Book 7, The Dark Tower.
All right, guys, some Stephen Kingisms for you. So up first, the number 19, Dinky Earnshaw is 19 years old. As you know, that is a magic number for Stephen King, and it weaves its way into all of his works in one way or another, following the re-release of The Gunslinger in 2003 with additional pages and just a revision, and that revision included the ominous nature of number 19. Number 2 is superpowers. We have people who we can refer to as breakers here. Other corners of the Stephen King universe, we could call them having the shine, but some include Carrie, Danny Torrance, Charlie McGee, Ted Brodigan, Dinah from the Langoliers, and others. And here we have Dinky Earnshaw. We have organization using psychics for their will. Here we have the Transcorp, which is very reminiscent of the shop from Firestarter. And as we'll see in the pages of the Dark Tower itself, we have All Jules Ciento. And at the time of this recording, which is about 10 years after the original recording of this Everything's Eventual review, we've had the Institute come out as well. Number 4, the Bully. King weaves a bully, this time Skip, into Dinky's past, and we have had a number of bullies bother our main characters of Stephen King works throughout the years. And now we have our Easter eggs. The first, of course, being Dinky's a breaker. This isn't just a spoiler. I don't want to give anything away, so spoiler alert for the Dark Tower. We will see Dinky again because he is a breaker. Number 2, Golden Years. Dinky references watching a show called The Golden Years, and King winks at the audience by saying, "You probably don't remember it." This is King's TV series that lasted only a few episodes, and you can find your review of the Golden Years on this feed as well. So thank you everyone for tuning into this spin-off episode of the Everything's Eventual reviews, and it serves as a kind of bonus and getting us ready for the Dark Tower, which will be here before we know it. So if you have any thoughts on the Dark Tower or anything within this episode, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. If you have any time on your hands, leaving a review on the podcast platform that you use to listen to the Stephen Kingcast would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. You can follow me on TikTok, on Blue Sky, on Facebook, and on Instagram. And that's all that I have today. So may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I'll see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen Kingcast.